Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna all. I'm just playing around with the screen a minute, trying to press the right button to make the right thing happen. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
How is everyone?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Very good. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
We've got 13 devotees with us to begin with. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure some more will be zooming in. So let's get started then. Let's first, we can recite the dedication, which is at the beginning of the Nectar of Devotion, a verse from Srinivasacharya's Sat Swami Ashtakam. Okay, if you have access, you can chant along. Or you can. Nana Shashta Vijanik Nipano Sabdama Samstapako Lokanam Hitakaruna Chubhavane Manyan Saranya Karo Radha Krishna Padada Vinda Bhajanan Nandela Matalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Ragayaga Shri Jiva Gopalako Vande Rupa Sanatana Ragayaga Shri Jiva Gopalako. Offering respectful obeisances under the 6 Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatana Goswami, Shri Rupa Goswami, Shri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Shri Raghunath Das Goswami, Shri Jiva Goswami, and Shri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizing, studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings, and thus they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because absorbed in the mood of the gopis and engaged in the transcendental love and service of Radha and Krishna. Jai Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastai Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Vananta Samta Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravadi Pachaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Hare Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let's begin as usual with having a little review of what we covered last week. Again, you can put in the chat. Okay, someone on the chat for your additional information has put a link to the Sat Goswami Astakam for future reference as well. So last week we did quite well. We covered the ground that we wanted to cover. And now this week we'll be doing hopefully chapters 5 to 8. Let's see how we go, but let's just go back in time last Sunday, and anyone could give us a little indication of what we covered last week. You can unmute and you can say, or you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. Okay, let's look here. 5 types of liberation. Yes. What about the 5 types of liberation? Why is that mentioned? Yes, Yashwini Sachi mentioned 5 types of liberation. What's the context of that? Okay, give me a few more seconds, then I'll give the answer away.
One is rejected, Prabhuji, in terms of merging with the Lord is not accepted, but the other 4 can be. Yeah,
can be. Why? Yeah, it's correct. They can be, but yeah, I guess it's right. I mean, they can be, but generally devotees won't accept any offering from Krishna of any of the 5 types of liberation. Definitely the first one, which means ekatvam, or merging into the Supreme. Yeah. And then we, because devotees are completely satisfied in their realized devotion to the Lord, wherever they might be in any situation. Yeah. And
there was
then
one I had confusion with, Prabhuji, which was the last one, which was to have the close association with the Lord. That one, I didn't understand why we should want that.
yeah, well, evil also the other one of living on the same planet as the Lord certainly sounds good. Yeah, this I think we did mention that last week, because the devotees, that's, as I mentioned, they're completely satisfied in their loving reciprocation with the Lord. So they're not particularly desiring to go anywhere as such. They've already realized the Lord, and they're already relishing the mellows of devotion. Yeah. So it's not as if they're aspiring to serve the Lord. They're not aspiring to go to a planet, not aspiring even in a sense of being with him for their own satisfaction. Wherever the Lord might wish to place them, they are happy to serve the Lord. Although the Lord will bring them back to him by his side, but they're happy to be used or engaged as the Lord sees fit. So in other words, they are desiring service to Krishna. That's their prominent desire. They're not desiring to change their position. But that makes sense. We spoke of this last week. So they don't generally, they don't pray to Krishna, oh, please take me away for you know, they're not praying for moksha, to be delivered from the material world, to actually go where Krishna is.
It makes sense, but it seems like quite high level, because we say back home, back to Godhead.
Yeah, back home, back to Godhead. Yeah, it's quite high level. Devotees are happy, but they want to be engaged in the Lord's service. So if the Lord may see it fit that they continue their service in the material world, then they will do that. Yeah. So in other words, their motivation is pure devotion, and they don't have much of a shopping list that actually goes with it. They're just serving the Lord. All right. Yeah. So anything else from last week? Eligibility for bhakti. Yeah. Dinanath is mentioned. That's the eligibility, is that one has some attraction or some taste. And that's your eligibility. Even if you still have material attachments, isn't it? We mentioned that even if there's still some attachment, there's to the material world, one may not be fully engaged in the principles, especially in the beginning, but just that attraction to the devotees, that makes them eligible to take up devotion. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's have another flashback from last week. And remember, there's one chapter which where we read some verses together, isn't it? The chapter that we put some verses up there where different devotees in the Srimad Bhagavatam are glorifying devotion and are not interested in liberation. Right? Remember that we went through those nice verses last week. All right, I won't put you on the spot anymore, but just remember, each week, it's good if you've got a notepad there, you can take some notes, knowing that we're asked for a little revision next week, you know, then you can be ready. Okay, when he asks for a little revision of what we did, I can mention this and I can mention that. So it's good, helps us to remember what we covered the week before, right? So let's begin then, where, as I mentioned, we're covering today chapters 5 to 8. So chapter 5 is the purity of devotional service. And chapter 6 is Rupa Goswami actually then begins to describe how to execute devotional service. So that chapter is entitled How to Discharge Devotional Service, what it actually entails. And then he gives, in chapter 7, he gives sastric evidence for those aspects of devotional practice. And then in chapter 8, then he speaks about offenses to be avoided in devotion. And primarily he speaks about offenses to be avoided in worshipping the Lord or in deity worship. So let's see if we get there today. So chapter 5 then is the purity of devotional service. And in other words, what's going to be explained here is that devotional service is not dependent on any other material considerations. Other processes are dependent upon the external circumstances. So an example might be like a Jnana yoga, in Jnana yoga. To be successful, one will need to be renounced and also highly developed intellect. That's Jnana yoga. So generally in that classic school of Jnana yoga, which is generally practiced by impersonalists or Mayavadis to a large extent, then you would have to renounce everything. Your house, your pet dog, your goldfish, your wife, your job, your family, everything. And you have to go and live somewhere in the Himalayas. So you can be peaceful. So it's dependent, in that sense, it is dependent upon specific material situation. Again, we have open question allowance here. So if you have a question, please feel free to ask. And for instance, Ashtanga yoga, generally, traditionally, some people might profess to do Ashtanga yoga at the local community hall every week, but actually, Ashtanga yoga is really a strict discipline, and again, it requires special circumstances, which generally is done only by those who are renounced in the true sense of the term, Ashtanga yoga, and then Karma Kanda. Yeah, there's many. That's completely dependent upon everything going perfectly. The time, the place, and everything has to be just right for the said karma kandik yagna to be successful. Yeah. But this purity of devotional service, this is what it means. It's so pure that the practice in of itself is not dependent upon any of these things. And that's what Prabhupada means when he gives a title here, the purity of devotional service. In of itself is so potent that it doesn't matter even if you are not renounced, if you're not very peaceful, if you don't have developed intellect, if you're not ready to live alone in the Himalayas, or you make a complete mess of a yagna, you're not very expert, you can chant Hare Krishna and you can reach perfection. Yeah. So in that sense, Bhakti Yoga is completely pure. So the purity of devotional service. That's why Prabhupada gives the title, the purity of devotional service. Yeah, and Rupa Goswami, you'll see in the beginning there, he mentions such other common prerequisites required for a lot of other Eastern disciplines. Good birth in a Brahmin family, for instance, natural purity of habits. Yeah, I know this will be described a bit later on, and proper execution of varnashram dharma. But bhakti is not doesn't depend on anything like that. depends upon itself. Bhakti depends upon bhakti. Yeah, and this we're going to see. Purity devotional service, execution of perfection of devotional service is not dependent on any material consideration. Devotional service is sufficient in itself, doesn't depend upon anything. All right? So it doesn't depend on, here we have a young Brahmin boy, he's just taking Diksha, mantra Diksha. I think they take it about 8 years old or something like that. You know? So in other words, low birth doesn't restrict one from executing devotional service. And that's just as well, because in Kali Yuga, everyone's of a low birth, except a few perhaps individuals. But generally, yeah, so low birth doesn't restrict it. And Prabhupada says, and he quotes Bhagavatam, Savai Pumsa Parodamo Yito Bhakti Dokshade, Oitiki Padiyatma Yenatma Supersidity. We happen to be reading this chapter in our morning Srimad Bhagavatam class in our temple, and we just covered this verse. So Prabhupada, to establish this point that it's not dependent, he quotes this verse, which the supreme occupation for all humanity is that by which men or women can attain to loving devotion unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So Prabhupada here is bringing out the part of the verse that it's for all humanity. And of course, for the development of this ahoitikiya pritya, the unmotivated and uninterrupted, that's a devotional development that naturally comes as one advances in devotional service. But the point here that Prabhupada's making, that it's available to everyone. Yeah, it's available to the dustman, it's available to the person working in Tesco's, it's available to the homeless person in the street, it's available to everyone who has a human body. Yeah, it's so potent and it's so pure that it can purify everyone. Yeah, so Prabhupada quotes that, and then I think it's here. Yeah, I think then Prabhupada relates some history. It's good. I think some of you will probably have done, but it's good to read through the chapters that we're going to cover before we have the class. So then it probably, if you do have any, if you identify any questions, but it generally helps to read it and then you hear it. Yeah, but there you would have read, if you have read or for your interest, Srila Prabhupada relates some history concerning Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who basically was at war against the caste Goswamis. Yeah, so they claimed a monopoly on the execution of pure devotional service, a birthright monopoly, which basically means only those born as Brahmins, yeah, can actually take up devotional practice to the Supreme Lord. Yeah, and and Prabhupada writes there was a great hard struggle for some time, but it has turned out successfully. And it's now correctly and practically established that devotional service is not restricted to a particular class of men. So the context of that is Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was given Diksha initiation to even persons from the Shudra class, to those who were not Brahmins. He was given a sannyas, he was given Diksha, he was given mantra Diksha, Nam Diksha, yeah, and engaging them in the service of the deities, much to the disturbance of the caste Goswamis. Yeah. Now, they would be disturbed for various reasons, but the main reason, because they had monopoly of the worship of the Lord in the temples, and that meant they had or the primary, or their means of income or sustenance, and the means of the reason for worshipping the deity was just to earn some money. So they was very concerned that that right would be taken away from them. Yeah. So there was a great, they was very much, and they gained they gained somewhat some weight as far as different people agreeing with them. Yeah. So it came to a head. Prabhupada doesn't mention it specifically here, but the history is that it came to a head where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he organized a Raj Mandal program, and all these and hundreds of people attended, and so news got round, and all the temples practically in Vrindavan were run by these caste Goswamis. So they locked the doors and they closed the doors so that when everyone came, no one could come and take darshan. There was one temple that remained open, and that was the Radharaman temple. So the Savites there didn't go along with these caste Goswamis. So it came to a head even more so that there was some what are called dacoits or hoodlums, they call, or dacoits, whatever you might want to call them, some ruffians or criminals. Then they was even given money or something, but they attacked the Paragon with sticks and stones and bottles, and they tried to disrupt the Vrindavan Paragon. Yeah, and that caused outrage amongst everyone in Vrindavan that these caste Goswamis have gone to that extent, to such an extent to actually attack the Paragon party. Yeah. So that turned the tide of or we could say that turned the tide in favor of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and everyone then sided with him. Everyone, except of course some of these caste Goswamis. So that's the history. There's a bit of history there. And something in the chat here. Let me just press the chat button. Nayan mentions, welcome Nayan Prabhu, Hare Krishna. I thought that was your voice. You asked a question in the beginning there. Welcome to our Nectar of Devotion study. Is it the first class you're joining us?
No, I attended last one as well, Paul.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't see you. Please excuse me. Anyway.
Excuse me. Thank you.
Prabhu, caste Goswamis say in the line of Lord Nityananda, did Lord Nityananda have any sons? As far as I know, he did, didn't he? Virabhadra Gosai. Yeah, he did have sons as far as I know, unless someone can correct me. Or do you know yourself, Nayan Prabhu?
Afraid not, Prabhuji.
Yeah, he did have sons. And so, so unfortunately, those who are in his line claim complete rights over worship as well. So that's one of the reasons Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, well, he was a sannyasi, but he was married before. That's one of the reasons he did not have any sons. Yeah. So yes, as far as I know, there is. And they claim, unfortunately, monopoly over worship. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentions in page 48, I just read from the Nectar Devotion, page 48. It might not, where you, if you have a computer copy, you might have to find it, but hard copy, page 48. He mentions that Krishna consciousness movement in the Western world is based on the above mentioned proposition of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, our spiritual master. On his authority, we are claiming members from all sections of Western countries. The so-called Brahmanas claim that one who is not born into a Brahman family cannot receive the sacred thread and cannot become a high-grade Vaishnava. But we do not accept such a theory because it is not supported by Rupa Goswami, nor by the strength of the various scriptures. Okay. And on page 49, let me just see what comes, page 49. It described even if a devotee falls down from the standard, there's no need for any separate process of purification. This is known as pious chitta. Yeah. And pious chitta is there in the Vedas. If someone, for example, if someone fails to offer respect or is disrespectful to a priest, or they may miss their particular religious ritualistic activities, or they may drink liquor, or they may fall down with a prostitute, or they may steal money, etc. Then they will be very well, probably not, I can say, although they do these things impelled by uncontrolled senses, they understand that what they've done is very wrong, and they're very fearful of going to hell. Of course, some don't care less; they don't believe in hell. Yeah, but generally in Vedic times, persons are fearful of overstepping dharma. So sometimes they will. So then that's the role the Brahmins would take. And they go to see the Brahmin, and the Brahmins would, through their knowledge of Veda, they would give a particular atonement for overcoming that sinful reaction. Yeah, it's also in the Manu Samhita as well. So, for example, one atonement might be that one has to, every day for a month, one has to bathe in the river with their clothes on and not attempt to dry them, and not, just come out the river and just have to, you get the idea. They come out the river soaking wet in their clothes and they can't change them. That's the more, could say, easier one than others. Some is very strict. Anyway, like that. They will give different things they have to do to overcome that path, So what happens if one is a devotee? Yeah, and one falls down from the standard of purity, like we have our 4 regulative principles. So what happens if one falls down? Well, they just continue doing exactly what they are doing. Yeah, that's why Bhagavad Gita explains apichet sudaracharo bhajate mamanandiba sodo eva samantavya samyak vyashato hisa. Even if one commits the most abominable activities, if he's situated in the right determination, he's not to be considered to be fallen, but it's considered still to be saintly. Yeah. And Prabhupada in the purport there, very interesting, he mentions that unless one does this, and unless one, or if one doesn't, if one derides a devotee because of a fall down, then there is a reaction for that. And Prabhupada's addressing, he's addressing the people in general should understand this. He's not speaking, let alone the devotees. Yeah, Prabhupada mentions the purport that everyone should, the people in general should understand this. What to speak of devotees. Yeah. So there's no need to, there's no separate process of purification, pious chitta. But in other paths like karma and gyan, then there is. Yeah. You just engage in your devotional activities, and immediately one is reinstated. And that's the, could say, the easy description. But there will be some, for a devotee who falls down, generally who might fall down from the principles, then it's not as if they take it, you shouldn't take it lightly. It's okay, I just carry on, No, there would be some, what's the word that's come to mind, some repentance there. And there may be some, it depends upon your situation. Then you may have to, for instance, if one is a priest doing worship in the temples and one falls down from the principles, then one will have to stop that for some time. But they still continue with hearing and chanting. Yeah. Also, there may be some censure from the devotee community. Yeah. If one falls down, yeah, there may be some censure. But still one continues the activities of bhakti, and one just continues. It doesn't. They don't have to stop through. Anyway, they don't have to do any prayaschitta apart from what they are already doing. All right. Any questions on that?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to ask Prabhu, does it also applies to the aparadh if someone does it to Vaishnavas? Because would that be considered as the same as fall down?
Well, in one sense, yes. In one sense, and Rupa Goswami deals with Vaishnava aparadh in the last chapter that we're going to cover today, chapter 8. Yeah. But if, I mean, there will be, if one is habituated to offending Vaishnavas, then it is going to have effect. Yeah. The mercy of the holy name will be withdrawn for some time. Yeah. But still, they should continue chanting. But they just have to, in other words, of course, it depends on the specific circumstance. If someone is habituated to it and it's part of their daily practice to offend Vaishnavas, then they won't. Krishna somehow will make arrangements that they get taken away from the association of Vaishnava. But say you're in a situation where you unwittingly, unplanned for, you're kind of in bad consciousness, something's come up in your heart and a situation is there and suddenly you treat a Vaishnava badly, you're in a bad mood that morning, nothing went right, and then someone just says something, they just say the right thing, just what you didn't want to hear at that time. You so-and-so, and that's, and they make some offense, then it may be that in that situation, if they come to their senses and they ask for forgiveness, then that's the thing to do. But even if you ask for forgiveness, then the devotee may forgive you, but Krishna might not. That's called the dust of the devotee's lotus feet. So because the Vaishnavas are very dear to Krishna, so naturally if you beg a Vaishnava, he's going to say, oh please, don't worry, it was me who offended you, like that. But still Krishna may not be pleased. So it may be the devotee may have to go some time with not much taste for the holy name or for the activities of bhakti. But if they're sincere, they will just continue. Yeah, this is quite a big subject actually. But it may be that the offense might be quite severe, so someone may have to go 2 or 3 years without a taste.
Oh no.
Yeah, but if someone's sincere, they will understand. Yeah, I have to go through this, and then gradually, the taste will come back again. One will be reinstated. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know one devotee who he concluded, he's a senior devotee. I mean, I won't say his name, but he mentioned that he had to go 5 or 6 years without any substantial taste because of the offenses he had made. But he was faithful and very sincere, so he accepted. Tatena kompom shashikshama. No, all is the mercy of the Lord. All right.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's very useful. Thank you.
I'm adding a bit more there to the discussion, but let me just see if I can get the participants thing up and I can see there's a question. I see someone's hand up, but I can't see the Yeah.
It's me, Prabhu. Hi, Krishna.
Gopal, yeah, please go
Hi,
ahead.
Krishna. Thank you, Vrindav and Matthew for that question. I just wanted to put a flip side to that. So
Yeah, please.
if the devotee asks for forgiveness, but to the person he offended,
Yeah.
but that devotee doesn't give forgiveness,
Oh.
but Krishna, like, what's
Then you
the
have,
paradigm in that?
well, generally devotees will, they're very merciful, but you have to, I mean, if you've offended a devotee, and then you might want to wait a few days till the storm calms a bit before you go and ask him for forgiveness, you know. Other than that, I mean, sometimes it may, or let's just say a devotee leaves the planet, or he leaves this world. You know, you've made an offense to a Vaishnava, and yeah, I have to go to that Vaishnava and beg for forgiveness. 1 year goes past, 2 years goes past. Every time you see him, or that offense I made, I have to beg for forgiveness, and then you don't do it. 3 years pass, and 4 years pass, and he dies. And you never beg for, and you never went to that Vaishnava to beg for forgiveness. What do? You chant Hare Krishna. It's like non-stop. That's what's mentioned in the Harinam Chintamani, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, in a conversation of Haridas Thakur. Yeah. So basically, the answer to that is that, yeah, if the devotee doesn't forgive you, then you should keep on trying, but still, devotee for some reason or another may not feel to forgive you. Then you just carry on. We don't just carry on, but you just chant Hare Krishna and you take shelter of the holy name, and then gradually, the holy name will reinstate you again. It may take some time. Okay, there's something else in the chat here. Hare Krishna, is there a pastime where devotees has forgiven the offense, but Krishna did not? This is from Agawa, Bridge, Peru.
Durvasa Munis?
Yeah, no, actually that's an interesting story, because with Ambarish Maharaj, that particular story, Krishna shows the example of how dear the devotees are to him, are to the Lord. And Ambarish Maharaj or Devasa Muni goes directly to Vishnu, and then Vishnu tells him to go to the Vaishnava. Yeah, you should go to Maharaj Ambarish and beg for forgiveness for him. So he's establishing he's establishing how dear the Vaishnavas are. Yeah. There's, I think, in the answer to the question, is there a pastime where devotees have forgiven the offense, but Krishna did not? In Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a few. There's a conversation which Haridas Thakur is having on the glories of the holy name, and he's establishing that by chanting the holy name, that liberation is just a side benefit. It's not the main thing. Moksha, it's just the main thing is Krishna Prema. Yeah. So these other kind of these other Brahmins, they disagree with it completely. They disagree with him completely. That liberation is the ultimate goal. And you're saying it just comes as a side benefit of chanting. And they get into quite a discussion, and they actually blaspheme Haridas Thakur. And I forget the detailed pastime where he says, they say, we will cut your nose off, and they say that to Haridas Thakur, if this is not true, you know. So Haridas Thakur, and so they offended Haridas Thakur, this particular man. Anyone who can remember his name can tell us. And he was quite an aristocratic Brahmin, in the sense he described he had beautiful features. And he made that offense to Haridas Thakur, and everyone was horrified. But Haridas Thakur didn't take it as an offense. He actually forgave him on the spot, practically speaking, and he didn't take offense personally. But this Brahmin caught leprosy, and his nose and it affected his facial features, and his nose fell off, and he died in great misery. I don't know if he died, but Haridas Thakur was very much didn't like to hear what that person had been through. So that's one example, Haridas Thakur himself. Another example is, I think it's a Gadadhar Pandit. Someone correct me if I got the personality wrong, but someone put the paraphernalia for worshipping Durga, was it on his doorstep, wine or whatever it is, so for worshipping Shiva or Durga, one of the two, I think it was Durga. And so so the next day he came and said, and I think Gadadhar Pandit saw it, he said, please everyone, come, just see, this is my, so no one believed him. No one believed him. So that was a big offense for one envious person. Yeah. But again, he didn't personally take offense. That's the nature of an elevated Vaishnava. But this person, he got the reaction for that. So there's a couple of examples that kind of highlight that it may be some time, even if a devotee doesn't take offense, or even if one begs for forgiveness, then there may be some time before one is reinstated. Yeah. In other words, it's not just, another one, someone's name is just put Jagai Madai hit Lord Nityananda with a pot. Yeah. But in other words, it's not just, otherwise it's not just a mechanical thing. Okay, I've just, offended the Vaishnava, so now I go and do this thing. That's it, done with. Okay, that's it, done with. Great, no problem. I just blasphemed you yesterday, but now please forgive me. That's it, end of story. It's not. There may still be some effects of that. Anyway,
thank you.
Yeah, let's speak. We'll speak before we get into a seminar on Vaishnava Aparat. We'll discuss more in chapter 8, where we shall cover this. So let's just continue on this. So pure. Yeah. So birth. Now we mentioned this one, purity, and so Rupa Goswami here is mentioning that this is Varnashram, situation Varna and Ashram. That he's speaking of, again, bhakti's non-reliance upon the purity in the beginning stages of the practitioner. Yeah, he says that Rupa Goswami says that devotional service is not dependent even on the proper execution of prescribed duties. Yeah. So because some people say that you have to first become purified by dharmic activities and in a varnashram, in a situation of varna and ashram, and then you can concentrate on bhakti. You see, you understand what people say? So first you have to do your duties, and then gradually you become purified, which is, one sense is true, but in another sense, bhakti can be taken up at any point in time. Yeah. And then Rupa Goswami, he gives different evidences for this. For instance, on page 49, he quotes, even if one does not execute his specific occupational duty, but immediately takes direct shelter of the lotus feet of Hari, Krishna, there will be no fault on his part. In all circumstances, his position is secure. Page 49. And it's Srimad Bhagavatam. Then he quotes Srimad Bhagavatam, page 50. My dear Uddhava, any person who takes shelter of me in complete surrender and follows my instructions, giving up all occupational duties, is to be considered the first-class man. Then on page 51, again he quotes in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear king, if someone gives up his occupational duties as they are prescribed for the different varnas and ashrams, but takes complete shelter, surrendering himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, Such a person is no more a debtor, nor has he any need to bother executing the 5 kinds of yagnas for becoming free from sinful contamination. Simply by discharging devotional service, he is free from all kinds of obligations. Okay? So, in other words, devotion, uttam bhakti, is not dependent upon varnashram dharma. Yeah? In the sense that varnashram purifies one, but the activities of bhakti in of themselves are very purifying. So it's not dependent upon it. So it may be helpful. In a sense, it may bring one to a level of piety, which they may then engage in an unknowing devotional act. Yeah, on bhakti on mukhi sukriti. I think we spoke about this before. But even some persons who may not be possessed of piety, they can take up bhakti. Yeah, I think, well, Jaga and Madha is interesting. They came from Brahmin families, so there was a trace of piety somewhere back there in their life. But it definitely cancelled it all out with their sinful activities. That they became great Paramahamsas by the grace of Nityananda, yeah, and Lord Chaitanya. And then Rupa Goswami also in this chapter he quotes Sarvadhamam Priyatyaja, yeah, 1866. Give up all occupations, just surrender unto me. I give you assurance that I shall give you all protection from sinful reactions. Then Prabhupada writes there, he'll have it on the Mas Suchaha, which means don't worry. So it says, don't hesitate, don't consider that because you are giving up all other engagements, there will be some flaw in your life. Don't think like that. I will give you all protection. Yeah. Now that might be first for some, if you're coming from a Hindu tradition, then your family may expect you to do all types of, or want you to do all types of rituals which you used to do when you was young, and the family always does these rituals, and and they may, but you can still. I think we was discussing this when we were discussing Anya Balasada Sunyam, the main verse in the Nectar of Devotion. To devotees free from all fruitive activities, but you may be obliged to engage in a fruitive activity, in a religious fruitive activity, according to your family tradition. But as long as for you, that's not going to make me advance in bhakti. Yeah. And if somehow or another, because of your engagement in bhakti or you're taking up devotional service, you are unable to honor ancient family traditions, then because you're engaging in bhakti, then there's no reaction for you. Because you're surrendered your life to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the worshipful Lord of all the demigods and the devas. That's the ultimate dharma that you can possibly do as a jiva. So the whole universe is pleased with you. Yeah. So, for instance, some I know, according to when you was brought up, say in your Hindu tradition, then your mother every day she lights a lamp and she offers the lamp to the forefathers and pictures in the house, and she goes throughout the house and offers a lamp, this and that. Then you take up devotional service and you stop doing those things. Yeah. Because you're surrendered to Krishna, there is no reaction for that. There may be a reaction from your mom. She may not be very pleased. But if you explain to her, don't worry, it's Krishna. I think you get the idea. Yeah, this question always comes up. What are the 5 types of yagnas, sacrifices becoming free from civil contamination? Let's see if I can get this. This was in a Bhakti by Baba class just recently. One of them, for instance, when you're cooking, you're going to kill millions of living entities in the flame or whatever. So then you offer some prasad to living entities. That's one, you know, when you're grinding wheat or something, traditionally, when you're making food, you make your living entities as well. So that's another. So then, anyone know the others? I should have noted it down, but there's different, let's just put it like this. There is different yagnas that's done in a house. One of them is to appease the forefathers as well. Yeah, because actually it's mentioned here actually. One is indebted to the forefathers. One is indebted to those who are teaching. Yeah. One's indebted to one's indebted to all the living entities. Yeah, so there's different yagnas that one will do in a traditional Vedic household, where their daily kind of killing of living entities, or also to give respect to all the elders and the forefathers. Then there's different yagnas. There's a yagna that would be done. But that's all covered in devotional service by giving out prasadam, yeah, by holding kirtan, by engaging in kirtan, distributing prasadam, offering prasad to the Lord, worshipping the Lord on the altar. Then that's all covered. All right. So sorry, I can't remember the details. Perhaps next week I'll come back. I'll look in my notes and get the details of exactly what those 5 kinds of yagna are. But that's the basis of it, is the activities done within a household. Yeah. Okay. And then we have this we have discussed already. Bhaktisiddhanta smashed the cask of Swami's notion. It's called the Nityananda Vamsa. Yeah, that question was asked, so this confirms that. Nityananda Vamsa, the descendants of Nityananda. It's those specifically persons who very much are claiming to have monopoly on giving diksha and in worshipping the Lord. Yeah. So ISKCON is based on these propositions. Let's see some quotes here. Yeah. Rupa Goswami then mentions after this is established, the rights to anyone through the process of diksha and mantra to worship the Lord through the Pancharatrika system of diksha. Anyone can become purified. Then Rupa Goswami, he gives a warning there, if you read, that if a person is properly initiated through mantra diksha, yeah, he should not think that he can do any nonsense. Yeah, should not think that his business is finished. No, that's just a beginning. Yeah, one has to follow the rules and regulations very carefully. If one doesn't, then one obviously again become mouse, you know, again become fallen. Yeah. So Rupa Goswami Prabhupada is mentioning there, he mentions that one must be very vigilant to remember that he is a spirit soul, and part and parcel of the body of Krishna, he mentions, part and parcel of the transcendental body of Krishna. So therefore, it's his duty to always give service to the whole Krishna. And then Prabhupada mentioned that if we don't, then we fall down. So in other words, what he's saying that just becoming initiated doesn't elevate one like magic to be a high-class Brahman. Yeah, one has to engage in their duties and follow the regulative principles to further development or to further develop the Brahminical qualifications, which may be there in seed form in order for you to receive diksha. Yeah, but then one should continue. It's not like, oh, that's it, it's all done. Yeah? That's why it doesn't look very well. Can you imagine? It doesn't look very well. We got these Nityananda Vamsa people who say that You cannot give diksha to sudras or persons who have eaten meat, etc. Yeah, there's some people say that they say that if anyone's eaten beef or meat, for example, then you have to drop your body only in your next life, because it's such a sinful act that stays in your body, that stays in your body. Only in your next life can you actually take up chanting of mantras and engage in worship, direct worship of Vishnu. You know? So no, the point I'm making here, that it doesn't look very nice if someone is initiated as a Brahmin and they're doing all nonsense. Yeah. And these caste Goswamis, they like see that. Just see this person's received diksha, and just look at his activity. Just see this ISKCON. Just see. Yeah. It doesn't look good it's not being a very good representative of ISKCON society. If someone has Brahman and they're doing all types of nonsense, yeah, that just adds fuel to the misconception of these caste Goswamis. Yeah. Now there may not be many, well, probably is here in England, for example, there's caste Goswamis temples as such. I don't know if there are, but there's a lot of people who follow them live in England, and they expect and they're looking for certain behavior from the ISKCONites who are initiated as Brahmins. And if they're not, then it's a great embarrassment. So anyway, so Rupa Goswami's mentioned it here as a warning. Rupa Goswami warns, you know. All right. And yeah, Rupa Goswami mentions that if one is regularly discharging devotional service, there's no question of a fall down. If circumstantially there is some fall down, the Vaishnava need have nothing to do with the pious chitta or the ritualistic ceremony for purification. Yeah, so we mentioned that. We just carry on. Yeah, and he explains this is the mystery of the Vaishnava cult, and that's mentioned in that's there in the next slide. Okay, so that could well be a question. What is the mystery of the Vaishnava cult? And this is the mystery. Yeah. There's no need for pious chitta, for the ritualistic ceremony for purification. Yeah. So this is the purity of devotional service. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when is the devotee at fault? We've just mentioned that in that warning from Rupa Goswami. When he neglects the angas of bhakti. So we're looking at the angas of bhakti. For example, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smara Parada Sevanam, Achanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atma Nivedanam. So that is when a devotee is at fault. Okay? When a devotee is not at fault, and we discussed this, failing to perform the duties of Varnashram is not considered a fault in bhakti. Okay. What to do? This is like a summary. What to do when the devotee falls from the principles? If one commits a sin, keep doing bhakti. Do not stop. There's no pious chitta. So we had an additional comment where I brought up an additional point for consideration, that there will be some feeling of repentance. Yeah, and it depends where one or what one is doing in their particular service. There may have to be like you may not be able to worship the deities or something like that, but you still continue with the activities of hearing and chanting. I'll mention there may be some censure from the community of devotees for what someone has done, so that is still some type of reaction is there, but then there's no ritualistic pious chitta. Yeah, you don't have to go to the Ganges and take bath in the Ganges. You just have to chant Hare Krishna. Also, you go to the bath in the Ganges is great. That will help. The main thing is you carry on with your activities of bhakti. So the conclusion then is of this chapter, ultimately, is that bhakti yoga is totally independent and self-sufficient. So that basically means that there's no impediment. There isn't any material impediment. So no material impediment should discourage one from the path of sharanagati, surrender. Yeah. From whatever position we are, from whatever background we come from, whatever has been done, or whatever a state of impurity or impurity we are in, or whatever background we come from, should just engage in the process of surrender, sharanagati. Okay. So that's chapter 5 in essence. Yeah, just keep in mind that we're giving the essence of the chapter. Like, we don't have time to go through every paragraph in these chapters. So that's really up to you to read and study. We're just going to give you a synopsis of the chapters, but some we will go in more detail and some we will not. Okay. So is there any questions on this chapter that we just completed? If not, we go to chapter 6. Now, so chapter 6 is simply Rupa Goswami is going to list the 64 prominent devotional practices as listed here, as stated here. And this is from the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Let's move a few things around. Yeah. So in chapter 2, under sadhana bhakti was defined as engaging your senses in some service to Krishna. Yeah. So now Rupa Goswami, as we mentioned in the beginning, is going to describe exactly what you do with your senses. So it's very practical, what you actually do, what it means to engage your senses in Krishna's service. So in essence, this is the breakdown here. So 64 principles. He gives 20 primary importance, 44 additional items, 10 things we should do, 10 things we shouldn't do, and 21 to 59 items of sadhana, and then the 5 most effective principles. Yeah. Now, in the slides that have been given, this chapter consists of just 3 slides. But each time I normally teach the Nectar of Devotion, I tend to go through these. Yeah. So is that okay? I've got the thumbs up there. That's good. Yeah. So what I do in chapter 7, I will elaborate more on the most important ones. But here, for instance, the first 10 or the first 20 of primary importance. The first one is Guru Pad Ashraya. Okay. Now this evidence and explanation of these will be given in the next chapter, but if there's any questions on this, we can also answer. But the first one is Guru Pad Ashraya, accepting the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master. The other one is Diksha, becoming initiated, and learning how to discharge devotional service. That is a substantial, important factor in taking up devotional service is Diksha. Yeah. Then obeying the orders of the spiritual master with faith and devotion, following the footsteps of the great acharyas, under the direction of the spiritual master, inquiring from the spiritual master how to advance in Krishna consciousness, being prepared to give up anything material for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. And he mentions there that we must be prepared to give up something that we may not like to give up, and also accept something that we may not like to accept. Yeah, what's an example of that? Okay, give up something we may not like to give up. What can be like? Before, you may have had a particular, you love to watch Bollywood films. Yeah, you love to watch Bollywood films, and now you've met devotees and they say, give it up. Yeah. So if you're serious, then you have, you may be, you're kind of somewhat over the years, you've got a liking to it, you're attached to it. And then if you're serious about devotional service, then you would give that up. And something that we may not like to accept. Yeah. Maybe devotees all get, you've never, all devotees seems to get fired up and, let's go house to house, knocking on everyone's door and give them books. No, I don't want to do it. You've never done that before. You've never stopped a stranger in the street and asked them and give them a book about bhakti, let them knocking on someone's door. And, you may not be something, it may not be your first choice of what to do in your spare time. You may be hesitant. But then the other devotees really infused you to get the idea. So then you do it, because the other Vaishnavas is doing it, and my spiritual master has requested I engage in some preaching. Then you do it, and that's surrender. That's what it means. Prabhu, what are we mentioned tea. Oh yeah, someone's put tea. Yeah, you may like tea. Then you hear the devotees say it's got caffeine in it. You can't take that anymore. And not so bad. You can get herbal teas these days quite easily. Yeah, so being prepared to give up anything for the Lord's satisfaction, everything, anything material. Another one that comes up a lot, this is repeated more than one time, about 4 or 5 times this is repeated. And it's residing in a sacred place like Dwarka or Vrindavan. So great emphasis is put on that. In the Nectar of Instruction, it's also given there as well. But then Prabhupada explains, as I think we know, is that it may not be possible. For most, it's not possible. So then what we do is we create a home, like we have deities at home, and we make the home like a sacred place. Yeah. But we should live in a devotional atmosphere. This is the essence, what it actually means, because it means that devotional service will be much more easy to execute. Like it's definitely easy to engage in. Those who've been to Vrindavan, when you go there or you go to Mayapur, everything seems so easy, the chanting, and you're just spontaneously attracted to the activities of bhakti just by the purity of the atmosphere. So that's the main point here. We should live in a place where devotion is prominent. Yeah. So if we can't live in the holy dhams, our house should be in a devotional environment. Yeah. Like I was, yesterday I went to devotee's house, and beautiful altar, and also last week a beautiful altar, and their house is just like a temple. Yeah, so it's very peaceful, very nice, sanctified, because the Lord is there and the deities are there. So, but this is mentioned 4 or 5 times, and you see it will come up in the Nectar of Devotion. Number 8, if anyone's got any questions about these, you can ask. Accepting only what is necessary, or dealing with the material world only as far as necessary. Yeah, that's a great art we have to learn, or we have to learn to live in the material world in such a way that we're not going to get unnecessarily entangled. Do what we have to do to maintain our situation. The rest of the time is spent in our devotional activities. Yeah. Most people haven't got time. They don't, training. Most people don't want to make time. They haven't got time for any religious or devotional pursuit. but it shouldn't be like that for devotees. So Rupa Goswami is mentioning this. This is over 500 years ago. Yeah, so the world's a lot more complicated now, with a lot more easily accessible temptations of distraction via the internet, for example. So many things you can crowd in your mind, so many topics you can read about, but actually we should try and only read and keep our life focused on bhakti. So without dealing with the material world, only as far as necessary. Yeah. But that necessary might be quite a lot. Anyway, if you've got children, you've got a job, and it's necessary to, you need a car, you need this. So still within that, we should just be aware of that and not get over entangled, Number 9, observing fasting days on Ekadashi, worshipping sacred trees like the banyan tree. So stay tuned on that one. What does that mean? We have to worship a banyan tree. Okay. We'll discuss that in the next chapter, where these are elaborated upon. So these are the preliminary necessities for beginning to discharge devotional service. If you've got the Nectar of Devotion with you, it may be easier. You can see. I should have put these up on slides, but I didn't. I didn't have, but it's sometimes easier to see it rather than me just reading. So if you do have the Nectar of Devotion, you might find it easier to follow what we're going over now. So the 10 we've just mentioned, that's necessary to begin the discharge of devotional service. Yeah. So he mentions in the beginning, a neophyte devotee observes the above mentioned 10 principles. Surely he will quickly make good advancement in Krishna consciousness. Does that sound good or attractive? Quickly make good advancement. So if you want to quickly make good advancement, look in the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 6, and go over what we just read and see if everything's in place there in your life. Yeah. And then he gives another set of instructions. I'm just going to go over these a bit quick, but if you're following in the Nectar of Devotion, you can read that. Once you give up the company of non-devotees, we'll expand upon that in the next chapter. One should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. That's preaching to those who have no faith. Any questions about that? That normally brings up a question. All right, so Krishna Gopal, thank you, Krishna Gopal. He's just he's putting them in the chat. Yeah, thank you. Could you put these next list in there, Krishna Gopal, as well? Great, thank you. So he's doing that, so you can see in the chat. Okay. So okay, so I'll ask the question here. It says here, one should not instruct a person who is not desirous of accepting devotional service. So what does that mean? I should not do book distribution? I should not preach to anyone? How can we understand this instruction in that light or in that regard?
Maybe not forcing them, like we can instruct as in we can softly preach, but not force upon someone who is not basically interested or,
Yeah, that's a kind of a good summary if you want to think, not forcing someone who is not interested. Yeah, we can offer. Yeah. Someone, Vrindavan Nat Prabhu has put, don't preach who wants to blaspheme the Lord. Yeah, so someone may be very envious or antagonistic or antagonistic. So then we should avoid those. Yeah. Of course, that wasn't the mood of Lord Nityananda with Jagai Madai, but that's Lord Nityananda. He's a crazy fellow, drunk with love. But generally, yeah, we're going to avoid that. And so, in other words, when we meet someone on the street, when we're not going to tell them about Radha, Krishna, or, all the pastimes. We may instruct them about reincarnation and karma. We keep it on this level of preaching. Yeah. But at this point, one should not instruct a person who's not desirous of accepting devotion. Yeah, so more I think that the first, we should not, if someone doesn't want to, we shouldn't force it upon them. Otherwise they will make offenses. We can offer. Yeah. Number 3. One should not be enthusiastic about constructing costly temples or monasteries. All right, now I just read through this because every time I read it, I get tempted to elaborate on it. But it said that the elaboration will be the next chapter. So one should not read too many books, nor one should develop the idea of earning his livelihood by lecturing on or professionally reciting Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. One should not be neglectful in ordinary dealings. Now, not all of these are elaborated upon, so I know this one is not. It doesn't mean, number 5, we should be responsible in society. We shouldn't be irresponsible in the name of being a devotee. We have to pay our taxes. We have to, do the, etc. Yeah. One should not be under the spell of lamentation in loss or jubilation in gain. Yeah, we should use our spiritual intelligence to keep ourselves steady. What is for sure, that there will be loss in our lives. Yeah, and there will be unexpected gain. We should make sure we're maintaining our Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So in other words, a materialistic person, when there's a great loss in their life, then everything goes down the pan. Yeah, they're completely miserable. The whole world is black and all is negative. But we're engaged in devotional service. So sometimes there might be great loss for devotees. Sometimes family members pass away or some really difficult situations. But we should steady ourselves by Buddhi Yoga, by the intelligence that's derived from the scripture. Yeah. 7, one should not disrespect the demigods. 8, one should not give unnecessary trouble to any living entity. One should carefully avoid the various offenses in chanting the holy name of the Lord or in worshipping the deity in a temple. One should be very intolerant towards the blasphemy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, or his devotees. So, perhaps what I would do, I will leave you to read through the rest of these in your own time. Okay, because it will take quite a long time just to read them all, And so let's just, some of them we're going to cover in the next chapter, but then it goes on. Now, there's a total of 64 items that are mentioned, 64 in all. So the first we read, they are the primary 10 regulative principles, okay? Then he gives secondary regulative principles, and then he adds another 44 other activities. So that comes to 64, yeah? Now, of these 4 items, 5 items, I think some of you may be already familiar with this, are very, very important. Yeah. Of those 64, these 5 items here are very important, which is worshipping the deity, association of devotees, hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, Sankirtan, and again it comes up again, living in Mathura or living in a holy place. Yeah. I think we mentioned this before, that even a slight contact with any one of these items, then an offenseless person can experience love of God. Yeah. If someone innocently sometimes comes in contact with one of these 5, because they're so powerful, they can experience the bhava of love. Now, that bhava may not stay with them from that point on all the time. Yeah, they would have to take up the activities of bhakti. But some of you may have experience where you may meet someone, or someone who sees the Rath Yatra procession, someone sees the devotees, sees the Harinam, or someone other, they book up for a tour of India and they happen to take the tourists to Vrindavan. You know, they go Vrindavan for half a day, Taj Mahal for 3 days, like that. They're on a package tour and they pack them up in Vrindavan for 2 days or 1 day, and they get in Vrindavan. There is stories like that. People visit Vrindavan. There's they'll just go there with a family. There's one famous story that Radhanath Maharaj tells of one devotee who was worshipping the deity for his whole life in the back of a cupboard or the back of someone's house. Anyone know who that is? Remembering the story now. And he just happened, he was living in, I think living in Delhi, and his parents, you know, wanted to go to Vrindavan for a day visit. And he was like 12 or 13 years old, and they took him, and he got to Vrindavan and he refused to leave. He refused to leave, and they couldn't get him to come back no matter what they did. And he stayed there for his whole life, worshipping his deities. It's a wonderful story. Radhanath Maharaj had his association, a wonderful story in that regard. So these 5 are very powerful. So what to speak of one is actually intentionally and making one of these or all of these or some of these part of one's life. So even if, you know, and that's it, it says even if one doesn't have faith, even if a faithless person comes in touch with one of these 5, if they're innocent and they're not offensive, they can experience love. So it's interesting because the first stage in devotional development is faith. But here it's mentioned that even without faith, these are so powerful. So these, then for that there's a verse here. This is the verse here from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 22, text 1 to 8. Sadhu Sangha Nam Kirtan Bhagavat Shravan Mathura Vas Shimutaya Shrataya Sevana. One should associate with the devotees, chant the holy name of the Lord, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, reside at Mathura, and worship the deity with faith and veneration. Okay. Okay, that was chapter 6. It's okay. Didn't go through too fast. Okay, some people. It's okay. So again, please read in your own time. And if you read some of these of the 64 angas and you want more elaboration or you have questions about it, then please feel free to ask. Now here, the next chapter, yeah, Krishna Gopal, you had, yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I may have missed this point, but
Please bring it up, yeah.
Out of the first principle 20 items of sadhana, which is considered the most important out of all of those?
First 20, okay, let me go back. Let's have a look. Does it state there specifically? Or you're asking?
No, it was just one of our homework questions, but I was just
Okay. Well, yeah, thank you for bringing it up. Yes.
just also interesting for my
is the accepting shelter of the lotus feet of the bona fide spiritual master, because I think it's mentioned there, you read in the chapter, he will teach you all these 64. Yeah, he's the one who's going to engage you in these activities. It's all done under the spiritual master. Okay. Yeah, thanks for asking that question. And perhaps you could do that, Krishna Gopal. Perhaps if you could be a homework watch out question person. So when we're covering things, just kind of bring it up. Oh, this question's in our homework, and we'll make sure we kind of cover that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else is doing this, but I've got the screen split up, so I've got all the devotees on one side, and then I've got the homework questions on the other.
Wow.
So as you, it's just how my brain works.
Oh, it's good. It sounds like your brain works in a very nice way.
Oh,
So you can just keep an eye on that for us,
okay.
because often I get carried away. They've always say they like to go over the homework questions, but sometimes I can't forget it. So you can bring these in.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard me address it specifically, then you can mention, yeah. Okay. So yeah. So let's the time is 1:56. Let's just have a break here now. Time is 2 o'clock to stop, but let's stop here for a break, and we can get together again at 1:15. Is okay for everyone? So you got 20 minutes there, just under, yeah. Okay, so see you in 20 minutes, and we'll continue with next chapter, which is evidence regarding what we have just described. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Welcome back. Hope you had a good time to do what you needed to do.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu.
Everyone can hear me?
Yes, Prabhu.
My camera's froze here.
We can see you and hear you.
Just say if they can hear me or see me.
Oh,
We can see you, Prabhu, and hear you as well.
Yes, Prabhu, we can hear and see you.
Oh, you can? Okay, great. Sorry, I had my volume down there. That's why I couldn't hear you respond. Sorry about that. Okay, so we got everyone back, hopefully. Okay, welcome back. So chapter 7 is going to give us a little bit more of some evidences of some principles from chapter 6. So we're going to elaborate a bit more on some of these. So Rupa Goswami is going to give some illustration, and he's going to substantiate by giving scriptural evidence. Yeah. So this chapter is going to cover the first 18 items, okay, that were mentioned in chapter 6. So we're going to elaborate a little bit more on most of those. So the first one we covered was Guru Pad Ashraya. And in answer to Krishna Gopal's question, this is the confirmation that this is the most crucial item, yeah, because it kind of opens the doors to all the other 63. And before I get going, I just want to go to the chat. There was a couple of questions before I forget to address them. Nayans wants some clarification on one must touch the lotus feet of the deity. Yes, you must touch the lotus feet of the deity. So you must get Brahmin initiation. You must come on the altar and touch the lotus feet of the deity. Yeah. First thing we do when devotees come on the altar, we tell them to put their head to the deity. Okay, they put their head to the deity. So yeah, it's considered very, there is one must touch the lotus feet of the deity. So you can't do that unless you have Brahminical initiation. You can have deities at home, you can touch their lotus feet. But generally this will be for devotees who are doing the worship. So if you want that, you should, get yourself initiation, etc. Okay, and Janaki asks, are these 5 the most potent? Yes. That's why they're specifically mentioned by Rupa Goswami. Then Nayan also asks in list in chapter 6, strike me, would you, looking through the list in chapter 6, please strike me, would like to inquire from you, touching the feet of the deity, so we've addressed that one. Taking all kinds of risks for Krishna. Yeah. Prabhupada took all kinds of risks, and sometimes he mentions that I was bold for preaching and I came to the West. Yeah, so we should take all types of risks for Krishna. Yeah, approaching people who we don't know, or risks for spreading Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Boldless, one time Prabhupada describes preaching as boldless adventures on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. For instance, Tribhuvannath comes to mind. Took so many risks, yeah, for spreading Krishna consciousness. So yeah, that's mentioned there. One should take all kinds of risks for Krishna. Yeah. He mentions building costly temples. In other words, it should not be done. This is mentioned there. One should not build costly temples. But here we are building the TOVP, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. It's definitely costly, millions of pounds. So the point here is that it shouldn't be done for one's self-aggrandizement. It should be done for preaching. Yeah, because sometimes you get it that you're going to get a mahant or a spiritual or a person who's maybe have many followers. Yeah, so to create an impression of how great they are, they want to build a big temple so that they become known as great. That's their inspiration. But for preaching, yes, we should build big temples, and that's what Prabhupada did. But Prabhupada didn't do it for his self-aggrandizement, to prove what a great guru he is, so he was. But he did it to shelter his many disciples. So that's the yeah, so Rupa Goswami is saying that, because some people do that. That's their mark of a big guru, to have a big temple. But that's the wrong, that's not Uttam Bhakti. Yeah. Okay, now?
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Otherwise, why are we building so many temples around the world? Yeah, Rupa Goswami says we shouldn't do it. No, for preaching, we should do it, yeah, to attract people. Okay, so thank you for that. So, yeah, so again, this first one, Guru Pad Ashraya, you know, this one principle opens up the doors to all the other items of sadhana. Because that's the idea, because the spiritual master is going to instruct you, you know, in the execution and the significance of these. Yeah. So then Rupa Goswami, then there's he gives evidence as well to substantiate this. And a verse that Prabhupada would often quote, Tasma Gurum Papadyeta Jigna Sustring Uttaman Shade Parata Nishnatam Paramani Uprashramayam. Yeah. So one should take shelter of the bona fide spiritual master. Tasmat Gurum Papadyeta. Yeah. And then Prabhupada would then it's not Prabhupada, but Prabhuda, one of the Nava Yagendras, who speak in the 11th canto, I think, or the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 3, text 21. There's a verse there where he actually speaks this verse, Tasmat Gurum Papadyeta Jignasya Shrem Uttamam. One should inquire from the Guru, yeah, and offer him all services, yeah. So he speaks that verse to King Nimi. First of all, he describes the futility of heavenly sense gratification, yeah, of the temporary nature of the thrills of this material world, be it heavenly planets or whatever. And then he quotes this as the most important thing to have in life, rather than endeavoring to go to the heavens. Tasmat Gurum Papadyeta. Yeah, he speaks this verse. Yeah. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gives a commentary on this verse. He gives a qualification of a guru as one who's understood the futility, or no, not the guru actually, sorry, of the disciple. It says only a person who has understood the futility of material sense gratification can approach a bona fide spiritual master. Yeah. So Tom Akinchana Ghochara. Yeah, one who is materially exhausted, one who understands the futility of so-called material life. So then otherwise you have to be a little bit serious, you know, about your life or about your spiritual practice. It's not a whimsical thing. It's like not a fashion. You know, it's because you want out in one sense, or you want to understand the real nature of life and the real purpose of life, you know. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments in that regards, quoting this verse from King Nimi. He comments that this should be the mood in approaching the bona fide spiritual master. Yeah. And he mentions there, Bhaktisiddhanta goes on to say, thus the first principle of devotional service is to clearly understand that the material world is a false shelter to fill the urgent necessity for spiritual life. And therefore, tasmat gurum papadyeta, therefore seek genuine shelter of a bona fide spiritual master. Yeah. So the first one there is Guru Pad Ashraya. Pat means feet, guru, and ashraya means shelter. So first item Rupa Goswami is mentioning, so very important. Then number 2 is kind of connected. Shri Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam. Yeah. Stay on the slide there. Shri Krishna Diksha Shikshadi. So accepting initiation from the spiritual master. Yeah. We have 2 initiations. One's Harinam Diksha, then one's Diksha. Yeah. So Harinam Diksha, initiated, where one gets beads and name and makes vows and chant Hare Krishna every day. So accept an initiation. And then receive instructions. Yeah. Now those instructions may be general, or you may have personal instructions. There may be general instructions. Point is, we follow the Guru's instructions. Yeah. Then Rupa Goswami again quotes Prabhuda of the Navayogendras, one of the 9 Navayogendras. It is this is on page 60. My dear king, a disciple has to accept the spiritual master not only as spiritual master, but also as Sakshat Ridvena, as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Super Soul. So he's considered not an ordinary person. Yeah. So in other words, we should accept the spiritual master with faith. Yeah. So in other words, giving of Diksha, the spiritual master is accepting the devotee's commitment and faith. Yeah. If we don't have that faith, or we're not that committed, then we're not really going to be able to correctly assimilate or execute the instructions of the spiritual master. Yeah. As you know, so as you know, there's a whole process that we go through. There's aspiring, isn't there? There's time that's spent aspiring, and there's recommendation. Some of you might have done the Guru Disciple course, the ISKCON Guru Disciple course, but this is elaborated on in great detail. But it's an important aspect of sadhana bhakti. Where, yeah, it is an important aspect. Taking initiation, inquiring from him, and or actually receiving instructions from the spiritual master. Yeah. Something comes, should I mention it? Something just come to mind. Yeah, perhaps I should. It maybe happens that you get an instruction from the spiritual master that you're struggling to do or struggling to execute for one reason or another. Yeah. So there can be some discussion with the Guru. My dear Guru Maharaj, you have given me the instruction. This is happening, that is happening. Yeah. So you understand, it's not just there is room, you could say, for, it's very personal. I mean, the instructions you get, if you're struggling in spiritual life and you're struggling to come up to the level of the instructions, then you may speak to the spiritual master and explain why. So I'm speaking about specific circumstances here, but you get the point I'm trying to make. That is, it's a relationship, but the general principle should be, you should be ready to execute the orders of the spiritual master. Yeah. Prabhupada didn't himself execute the orders of his spiritual master until 40 years had passed or more. Yeah, he got instructions when he first met Bhaktisiddhanta to teach Krishna, or to teach the science of Krishna to the Western speaking world, to the English speaking world. It was only after many, many years that he did that. But the point is, this is what one should be ready to receive instructions from the Guru. Yeah. Shri Krishna Dikshadi Shikshanam. Okay, just check there's nothing in the chat. Okay. Again, any questions, you could raise your hand or unmute and ask. Yeah, Prabhupada says on page 60, one should learn Srimad Bhagavatam seriously with all respect and veneration from the spiritual master. Yeah. So Prabhupada gave his life and soul to giving us the purports and the explanations of Srimad Bhagavatam, and our consequently our respective gurus are doing the same. So we should give great respect for that. Prabhupada mentions that, page 60. And number 3 is, here it says Patipurvaka Guru Seva. Here it's listed in my notes, Vishrambhanena Guru Seva, same thing. Serving Guru, says serving Guru with love, or serving the Guru with faith and confidence. Again, from the Navayagendra Prabhupada, hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam is a religious process which elevates one to the platform of serving and loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So kind of related. So serving the spiritual master with faith and confidence. Yeah. I'll ask a question here. What does confidence in the Guru mean? Could someone elaborate on this a little bit?
Confidence means we can, we have the ability by the mercy of the Guru that we can perform our services, assigned services.
Okay, yeah, that's one thing. Anybody else?
I think confidence in Guru means, well, personally to me, means that any instructions that he gives me, I will definitely follow, because in my hearts of hearts, I have confidence that he's got the best interest for me.
Yeah, very good. That's kind of more what I was thinking of. Yeah, very good. Anybody else can elaborate on that? I'd like to add to that. But yeah, we have confidence that he is Shakshat Dadridvena, that he is representing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's a manifestation of the Super Soul. So what he says is in my best interest. Yeah, very good point. That is in my best interest. That's Vishrambhane Guru Seva. Yeah. So, and I can achieve all success in my life. Yeah. So this is an important principle in our Krishna conscious movement, in our practice of bhakti. As you know, most devotees, we're all seeking, those who have a spirit of God, those who are aspiring for, most devotees will take initiation, or they're aspiring for initiation. There's a guru disciple course. So this is all, Prabhupada was a spiritual master, and now his disciples are spiritual masters, and the same thing. So Rupa Goswami is mentioning this as a essential item in sadhana bhakti. Yeah. And here, yeah, Rupa Goswami is then, again, he's mentioning that the Acharya should be accepted as the Lord's very self. So he should be, again, should be given great respect. And we should hear from him in that mood of great respect. So I'll just read from here. Understanding the importance of service to the Supreme Lord, and knowing the spiritual master to be non-different from him, the disciple must serve the Guru with strong faith, shraddha. Yeah, okay. So these are the first 3, and there's more. Again, this is taken evidences from the last chapter. Okay. So number 4, Sadhu Maghanu Shara, Sadhu Vatmanu Vatmanam. Yeah, so following in the footsteps of saintly persons. Yeah, and interesting what I think Prabhupada here gives the example of a Lord Buddha. First of all, he mentions about this point of we must only follow our own spiritual master, but all the bona fide gurus and acharyas in a line of disciplic succession. So he mentions there should be no dissension between the two, between the guru's teachings and the teachings of the guru parampara. Yeah, because the qualification of the guru is that he represents the guru parampara. Yeah, if the teachings are against that, then it's not in line with devotional service. So, and then Prabhupada, he gives Lord Buddha as an example. Yeah, and he mentions that, okay, well, he mentions he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. He's a manifestation of one of the Shaktis or energies of the Supreme Lord to serve a very, very specific purpose. However, I mean, it is the Lord. So Lord Buddha is an example. Even though he is the person of Godhead himself, his followers are not practicing uttam bhakti, not practicing pure devotional service. Yeah. For circumstantial reasons. Buddha did not strictly present the scriptures according to Guru Parampara. Yeah. So therefore, we will not follow the teachings of Buddha as such. Do we follow that? Yeah. And Prabhupada, then Rupa Goswami then quotes the well-known verse, Shuti Smiti Prananadi Panchayata Vidimbina Akantiki Hari Bhakti Upatayeva Kalpate. That if one executes so-called devotional service without following the Shruti, the Smriti, the Pancharatra, in other words, without following the scriptures, the acharyas, and it just creates a disturbance in society. Yeah. His so-called devotional service is simply a disturbance to society. So in other words, one must follow the footsteps of devotees who are faithful to the parampara. So he gives as an extreme example, you could say, Lord Buddha, who happened to be Lord Krishna himself, but for typically circumstances, Lord Krishna wasn't following the parampara, which is quite amazing, isn't it? In his manifestation as Buddha, he wasn't following the parampara. He was creating his own dharma for, as we all, I think you know that's reasons before it. We won't go into that, take too much time, but for specific reasons. Yeah. All right. And number 5, Sattama Pritya, inquiring about eternal religious principles. So this is what we inquire from the spiritual master. We're inquiring about the details of application in our specific circumstance, in our specific life. You know, as we're reading, or things come to mind, or questions come to mind. We say questions, we could also have doubts, yeah, that come from when we study, you know. So we may contemplate, but we could note them down, you know, and we can ask either the guru or senior Vaishnavas. Yeah, it's a great heart. We should learn how to draw out. I'm going to say, draw out the inner realizations of great souls, yeah, great saints or great souls. We should ask questions in such a way that we make full use of their presence, you know. Sometimes we find it embarrassing when a guru comes to give class, he gives class and says, "Is there any questions?" There's no questions. Hey, there's no question. We should be, you know, we should ask a question just for the sake of him speaking, You know, think someone. Okay, some of us may be shy. We should in asking questions, but we really we shouldn't be. Or somebody, maybe we might not ask questions because we're afraid of our false ego. We might ask the wrong question, you know, in the wrong way, and everyone will think this of us or that of us. No, we should be inquisitive. Of course, there's different natures. Some devotees will be more inquisitive than others, but generally, everyone we should all be interested in inquiring. You know, sometimes the questions can be, isn't it? Those who attend or you listen to classes, then sometimes the questions can be the best part of the class. Can be like that. Yeah. So we should, there's a quote, I'm just paraphrasing a quote that I read, found it very interesting, that we should learn how to draw out from saints the secrets which encapsulate their heart. So that drawing out means questions. So you ask questions and you bring it out, you know. So make use. So inquiring about eternal religious principles, Dharma Pritya. Yeah. And this can be a guru, it could be senior Vaishnavas, it could be devotees in our community, you know. We should ask them, you know, just because they're not in saffron or they're not gurus or whatever, you know, we may be, you know, we come to the temple as devotees who've been practicing for 20, 25 years, you know. They got so many realizations, so much wisdom to share. Yeah, don't just think questions are just for those in saffron. No, this is all external. Prayer in the community, there's devotees who've been practicing for like twice as long as we have, and they have wisdom, they have realized knowledge, you know. So again, it's inquiring about eternal religious principles, asking questions, you know. Yes, very important. All right, it's okay so far. Yeah, people nodding their head, very good. Okay, number 6, I think we mentioned this, I think, did we? Or something is related here. Being prepared to give up everything material for Krishna's satisfaction. Okay, everyone's ready for that? Yes, very good. Being prepared to give up everything. Yeah, we have to give up everything anyway, you know, when we leave this world. So yeah, Krishna wants everything as well. He wants everything that's not needed, yeah, for your devotional development. All the peripheral stuff, you know, everything material. That could be elaborated on quite a bit. You know, there's lots of material things which are floating around in our subtle body, misconceptions and this and that, and fears and attachments. If you can literally give it up for Krishna, for Krishna's satisfaction. For Krishna's satisfaction, we will walk the plank of the unknown. You understand that statement? For Krishna's satisfaction, we will walk the plank. Anyone knows what walk the plank means? Anyone out there? Perhaps not. Okay, walk the plank. We used to have this term when I was younger, when I was a teenager, walk the plank. You know, if there used to be times when there used to be these sailboats, you know, these big boats before the Industrial Revolution.
Is it the pirates?
Yeah, pirates. So what they would do sometimes, not pirates, sometimes these cargo boats, they couldn't get people to join them on the voyage across the Atlantic or whatever, because there's a good chance of dying. So what they would do, they would have these press gangs. So they would go around the inns in the London area where persons are drunk and in a stupor, and then they would wrap them up in a sack, and while they was, you know, half unconscious, they would take them on the boat, you know, and then the boat would set sail and they wake up from this stupor in the middle of the ocean. But then they would rebel and all types of, you know, cause a big nuisance. So then they would have to walk the plank. So they put a plank over the edge of the ship, give them a blindfold, and have to walk off the edge of the ship into the unknown. So why am I giving that example? Well, sometimes it's like that we may not exactly know where we're going with this, giving up all these things material. Yeah, so we have to be a little bit daring, you know. Yeah, Krishna says, let me give up this, let me give up that. Okay, let me do it. And kind of walk the plank of the instructions. But, you know, we don't fall into the ocean. We fall into Krishna's arms of protection. Anyway, Hare Krishna. So everyone's okay for that one? Being prepared to give up everything for Krishna's satisfaction. Yeah, the wonder about Krishna, I hope this doesn't scare anyone away from devotional service. But from my experience, that you give everything to Krishna that you think you've got. You give everything. Yeah, I'm going to really give everything. Then Krishna will say, oh, actually, you still left something behind. You haven't given everything yet. So you give everything. Then once you've given everything, Krishna asks for more. Anyway, Hare Krishna. We should be ready for that. Happy with that, you know. We will not be the losers. So number 7 comes up again. Residing in a sacred place. Here it is again. I think the 3rd time. So we won't elaborate so much on this. We've already mentioned that we should live in a devotional environment. Yeah. Even if the rest of the house is not devotional, at least your room should be devotional. Your room, that should be a devotional environment. If you live in a temple, great. If you live in a shared house, then at least your room in the house is a holy dham. Yeah. It's a sacred place, you know. We can't manage to live in holy dhams, you know. Then number 8 is accepting only what is necessary. This we mentioned as well. This is a quote from the Narada Purana, Naradiya Purana. That mainly we accept only what is necessary for our maintenance. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions, page 63, took note here. It is better if one fixes up a regulative principle according to his own ability and then follow that vow without fail. That will make him advanced in spiritual life. Yeah. So without fail, you know, takes up a regulative principle according to his own ability. So that's interesting. Yeah? And then follow that. Yeah? That will make one successful. Yeah? So only what is necessary in life. You know? Yeah. Probably a lot of people in their houses, perhaps even themselves, we may have lots of. Has anyone got anything unnecessary in your house? Something you haven't used for the last 15 years or looked at? You got unnecessary things, stuff. Where isn't it? We've got unnecessary things and stuff that it's good to every now and again have a clear out, you know. Have a clear out. Oh, this is unnecessary. You know, this is. I've had this booklet in my house for the last 25 years. No, I haven't looked at it, so it's unnecessary. Get rid of it. Except only what is necessary. But that's simple. But another mean is the way of life that we live. Yeah. The occupations we take up and or what we do. Only what we need to do while we're moving in this material world, which is full of nomenclatures of different names and things. Let's move around this world in a simple way. Yeah. Without accumulating unnecessary attachments, you know. Right? It doesn't mean we all have to sell our house and live in a tent somewhere. It's not saying that. But we should just mark out a simple life for ourselves, you know. And that's going to be different to every one of you. That's to every one of us according to our specific circumstances. But this is it. So it's a general principle, okay? Right? Accepting only what is necessary so that we can have peace of mind and more time for devotional practices. Yeah? And yesterday was Ekadashi. So number 9 is observing fasting on Ekadashi. So we do that, we take that up. It's quite well known. No one really argues with that. I don't think. Sometimes there's some discussion on can you eat this, can you eat that? But without going to all those details, we should observe. Ekadashi comes twice a month. It's quite very important actually. Prabhupada instructed his disciples from very beginning days in Ekadashi and in following it. So Rupa Goswami is giving it. There it is, Nectar of Devotion. Yeah. And this one, 10, offering respect to banyan trees. Yeah. So this is coming from the Skanda Purana. So Rupa Goswami here, he's like mentioning the scope of devotional practice. So a general disposition towards the world and everything is a devotional one. Yeah. So for instance, the banyan tree is a manifestation of the Shakti of Krishna. Yeah, it's considered a worshipable in India. Lord Shiva resides under a great banyan tree. So one should have respect for the banyan tree and for all living entities. Yeah. This includes Tulsi. Yeah. We should have respect for Tulsi, and Brahmins, cows, it's mentioned. Yeah. And now Jiva Goswami, there's an interesting note from Jiva Goswami on, he gives a commentary on Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. So it's interesting to read that. It's easily available. I think I mentioned it in the first class. This is one of our reference points for teaching. Danadas Swami's Ways of Devotion is one, and this is another one, Jiva Goswami, and also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. His commentary and Jiva Goswami's commentary on Rupa Goswami's book is in one book. So anyway, Jiva Goswami notes that Krishna, who is Gopal, he's pleased when you take nice care of the cows. Yeah, so he mentions how one should gently scratch the body of a cow, offer a handful of green grass, and also reverentially circumambulate with one's right side kept towards her. Yeah, sometimes it's described and one should scratch the cow. So it's, scratch the cows under the ear, they like it very much, So it's interesting, nice little detail there that's mentioned by Jiva Goswami. It's an aspect of, he mentions it in regards to giving respect to the banyan tree, and he expands it, Tulsi tree, Brahmins and the cows, and then he gives it detail about the cows. Yeah. And number 11, this we commented a little on, giving up the company of non-devotees, Krishna vimukhani sango chago. And Rupa Goswami gives quite a quote here in this regard to how much important it is. So we're ready for this one. Even if one is forced to live in a cage of iron in the midst of a blazing fire, he should not accept this position, rather than live with non-devotees who are through and through against the supremacy of the Lord. So rather live within a cage of iron in the midst of a blazing fire. One should prefer to embrace a snake, a tiger, or an alligator, rather than associate with persons who are worshippers of various demigods, or simply impelled by material desire. Yeah, so quite important. Yeah. So as is, we see that devotees like to live with devotees, isn't it? It makes devotional practice very easy, but sometimes devotees can't. Sometimes, for instance, the wife becomes a devotee and the husband refuses to be a devotee, doesn't want to be a devotee. Yeah, so many devotees are in a difficult situation. So this has to be understood with great foresight and intelligence of how we apply this according to our specific circumstance. Yeah. So for instance, it may be that a husband, or vice versa, let's say the wife is into Krishna consciousness and the husband is not. Yeah. So without getting into too many details, if if the husband is at least, what's the word, tolerating and doesn't mind you doing your devotional activities, say the wife, yeah, then there's no need to particularly, if he's not antagonistic or antagonistic, or not envious and outright, say, vicious in your actions of bhakti, then you shouldn't necessarily give up that situation. It might create more disturbance for you. One example, okay, is, again, the details may be different to each person, but in general, we should try and live with devotees. Yeah, and we see that, like in our temple, we have a notice board, and there's one notice board that we have, which is where devotees want to live with other devotees. Yeah, and it's always full with notes, little notes saying, devotee wants to share with another devotee in so-and-so. One devotee's got a house and he only wants devotees to live in their house, and he's asking for devotees to come and live in their house. There must be 50 different all devotees in there. And there's a whole thing goes on when a devotee wants to live with somewhere, you know, and they're asking. So, you know, everyone knows Tripad, our receptionist. He's a good contact for that. He knows lots of devotees because he's a receptionist. So, you know, devotees will there. It's good. They understand this point. They want to live with devotees. They want to share a house with devotees. They, you know, live with devotees. You know, it's not actually it becomes. Yeah, that this is good to mood to be in. You know, rather than someone conclude, I don't want to live with devotees. That's a problem. I don't want to live with devotees. That's a problem. You know, we should want to live with devotees. Anyway, any comments on this from anyone? Anyone struggling with this? Anyone? Rupa Goswami would rather live in a blazing fire in an iron cage. Yeah, because they have complete opposite values. They have complete, you know, if we associate with non-devotees too much, their values, if we're not strong enough, we will pick up their values in life, you know. Like for devotees, you know, we're very, not horrified, but we're very careful not to, you know, overstep the regulative principles. But if you're living for someone who doesn't give a hoot, who doesn't care, and they're drinking alcohol, and for them there's no sinful activity and it's a complete wonderful thing to do, you know, sometimes we, you know, they have no fear of transgressing any principles, and sometimes if we're not strong enough, we may also take up their don't know if their values at all, but their materialistic, animalistic values in life. Anyway, I think we get the point. Yeah. Recommendation, Rupa Goswami. Live with Vaishnavas. Yeah. And even mentions, yeah, you know, demigod worshippers. So live with, if you can, Sudha Bhaktas, those who are on the path of pure devotion. Yeah. Yeah, and then Prabhupada then adds a reference as well. And he paraphrases a well-known verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, where a definition of a Vaishnava, he's asked, what is the definition of a Vaishnava? And Lord Chaitanya gives the definition. He is one who gives up the company of non-devotees. Yeah. Right. So just thinking now also, this doesn't, if there's any questions you can ask this, but a question that normally comes up, well, what about work? I have to go to work. I have to associate. Yeah, we do. But we just learn to, you know, we don't go to the pub with them after work. We, you know, we establish certain boundaries, and we don't reveal our mind to them as such. It's just, how are you? Nice day. I say it's raining yesterday. Hope you're fine. We keep it on that level. We don't share the loving exchanges with them that's given in Nectar of Instruction. That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks like that. That association means to engage in these loving exchanges, revealing one's mind, accepting gifts and charity, giving food and accepting prasadam. This is only done in the loving sangha of Vaishnavas. For the rest of you know, we work in this world, it's just official, you know. You don't really, you understand everyone's okay with that? Anyone who got any comments on that, or points or questions, you feel free to ask. If not, we can go on and check anything.
Can I just ask a question on that? If you're working in a non-devotee atmosphere, if you don't reveal your mind, you're not actually then preaching, or you're not actually spreading Krishna consciousness. So
yeah, you have to, yeah.
You have to be careful when to speak and who to speak to, I guess.
Yeah, basically that's really it. It may not be advantageous for you to start trying to convert everyone in the office. It might create some awkwardness there, but you have to judge for yourself, and Krishna will give you that intelligence, you know, of how you can maintain your working environment. Yeah, because it can, you know what it's like, you know, say if someone joins your workplace and they're born again Christian and they want to convert everyone in the office, then you know, they might just get, you know, shuffled out, you know, the boss might just move them out. You understand? So we have to be a little bit intelligent how we move around the world. You know, you might be at work and then you strike up a relationship with someone, and you know, and you find when you get to know them a little bit, you find there's some scope for sharing your life of devotion, you know. And you might, and that's when actually one of the I have the experience, the biggest preachers are often devotees like you yourselves who are working with non-devotees. You can do so much wonderful preaching, but you have to be a little bit tactful how you do it. You shouldn't be accepting their values and their association, but where you may, as I said, you did a relationship may develop where you can share something, you know, and then share a bit more. And you have to kind of tread a bit carefully, so to speak. Yeah, so yeah, we should preach, but we should preach in using our intelligence according to the circumstances that we are in, you know. Unless you're someone like Prahlad Maharaj, who didn't he just preached to anyone and everyone in class. He was preaching to his father as well, completely fearless, didn't care at all. Every student he preached to, and they was all sons of demons, you know. And that's, you know, that's Prahlad. That's special. Other than that, you know. There's something in the chat here. Bridge is asking a question. There is always a risk of offense while associating with devotees of Lord Krishna. What's your... Yeah, there's always an offense. There's always a risk of offense, but better risk that than risking going to hell in the association, without the association of devotees. Let's take that risk, you know. Better take that risk. If we think, no, I want to associate with devotees because I might make an offense, then how are you going to get back to Godhead? You know, you won't go back to Godhead. Sorry, my Lord, I can't go to Goloka Vrindavan just in case I offend your devotees. I'm exaggerating the mentality. So yeah, there's a risk. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to be careful. You know, of course there's a risk. You know? So we just be careful, but we shouldn't. It shouldn't be a conclusion. Or therefore, I will not associate with devotees. No, because how are we going to become a devotee? Unless we associate with devotees, yeah. Right, I'm just time checking. We finished at 3:30 today, is that right? 12:30, yeah. Okay, Bridge, is that okay?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, yeah. So let's go, 12 to 14. Not accepting unfit disciples. I think we answered this in Nayan's nice question. Constructing many temples or reading many books. All right, so accepting unfit disciples, yeah, this is principle. If any one of you is thinking of becoming a guru, yeah. Well, no, this is serious though. Principle for gurus, one should accept only, yeah, serious disciples, you know. Otherwise, there could be consequences for the guru. If the guru is not so concerned about, you know, but he should be concerned. He should make sure that they're qualified disciples. Otherwise, there may be reactions for the guru. Yeah. So that Rupa Goswami mentions that there. So he's speaking to the gurus. Constructing many temples, we've already mentioned that. Not for our own self-aggrandizement, or reading many books. So we have many books, yeah, but we're not reading many books just to become scholars or pundits, you know. We have a main book, Srimad Bhagavatam, Nectar of Devotion, Ishopanishad, Nectar of Instruction, Bhagavad Gita. So we study these books, you know. So we said we shouldn't become a bookworm. Everyone knows what a bookworm is. Just books, reading books, this book, that book, this book, that book, and then we might lose our focus, you know. So, you know, Rupa Goswami is saying this. Of course, if you have a specific devotional service which necessitates in-depth study, yeah, then that's understood. You know, Rupa Goswami mentions that we read books that will inspire us in our devotional service, but even there, we shouldn't get too. There's so many books you can read, as we all know, isn't it? There's so much we want to read. Okay, so note here I have from Danadas Swami. Let's read this. If money comes of its own accord, a spiritual master can construct costly temples. That's what Rupa Goswami did. The money to build this temple for Radha Govinda just came to him. There's a Leela how that happened. One merchant, and he became very affected by Rupa Goswami, and he offered to build a temple. In the beginning, Rupa Goswami said, "No, I don't want to build a temple for my deities. It's okay. I can worship under a tree. It's very simple, very nice, and it's okay. Don't worry. I don't want a temple." Yeah? And then he thought about it. And then he saw that merchant again. He said, "Actually, why don't you build a temple?" Yeah, because he wanted to engage him. He was offering all this money to build a temple for Radha Govinda. So then he said, "Okay, you can build." But he wasn't really first. Didn't see the need in it. Yeah. So again, mention that. A qualified person can study the literature of the great acharyas, but his motive must be to purify his heart, not to deliver lectures intended to impress others. Yeah, this should be. Yeah, I'm going to learn all these slokas, and I'm going to learn this, and when I give class, everyone's going to go, "Wow, what a great class." No, I don't really. Krishna makes arrangements, actually, if you have that mentality. Yeah. So in other words, false prestige is opposed to bhakti. So we should be on the lookout for it. Wherever false prestige or false pride is always trying to get in, you know, it's looking for a little gap, you know. As soon as we're not attentive, jump in. And you know, false ego, you know, the enemy, and so lust and anger as well. It's always trying to disturb us. So we should be attentive, you know. And 15, 16, straightforwardness in ordinary dealings, and equilibrium in loss and gain. We've mentioned that. At least the second one, equilibrium in loss and gain. This is the nature of this world, so don't get too worried about. You know, there will be losses, there will be gains. Straightforwardness, yeah, let's be straightforward. Vaishnava is simple-hearted, straightforwardness. And demigods is mentioned. One should not neglect to offer respect to demigods, but we don't offer our puja to the devas, we offer our great respect. So we should never be disrespectful. We are respectful to everyone. What to speak of such empowered personalities as the demigods. We should be respectful to Boris Johnson, yeah, because he's in a position of authority. So what to speak of the demigods? But we don't worship Boris Johnson, and we don't worship the demigods. We worship Krishna, but we give respect. Yeah, we give respect to Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, exalted persons. We should try not to give pain to any living entity. Yeah. We should not, there's a statement in the Mahabharata, A person who does not disturb or cause painful action in the mind of any living entity, who treats everyone just like a loving father does his children, whose heart is so pure, certainly very soon becomes favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah. Reminds me of a verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Yasman nidvotvache loke lokom nidvotvache aha samasa bhajut vega mukto ya same priyaha. He for whom no one is put into difficulty and does not disturb anyone is very dear to the Lord. Yeah, say that he for whom no one is put into difficulty, nor does they disturb anyone, is very dear to the Lord. Yeah? It's not given any pain to any living entity. Okay. So that ends chapter 7 and beginning chapter 8 with 20 minutes left. So any questions then on that, on those? Let me check here, anything, otherwise we're going to chapter 8.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I just have one question about the straightforwardness.
Yes. Yes.
I have one question about the straightforwardness. Sometimes it can be sounded rude. So how devotee can be a straightforward in his dealings?
Yeah, no, there's different contexts of the word straightforward. Sometimes when we hear the word straightforward, I mean, you just, you're going to just give it to someone whether they like it or not. Straightforward. Sometimes, but it's not that context. This is a different context. It means that someone's not duplicitous.
Okay.
We don't have hidden agendas. We're just, Vaishnava is like an open book. There's nothing to hide. We're straightforward.
Okay.
In our relationship, we're straightforward when it comes to crying from the spiritual master. We're not got some agenda, like that. We're straightforward. It doesn't mean, you take, you tell someone what they need to hear. It's not, doesn't, it's okay.
Yeah, this makes sense. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Straightforward. Yeah. Thank you good to clarify that. Thank you. Okay. So now I'm just gonna attempt to bring up. Now I've got from my previous teaching of Nectar of Devotion. I decided to use my own PowerPoint on this because it's. So I'm going to do that. So I'm trying 1 second. On this slideshow. Okay, that's good. So this is chapter 8. So this is offenses to be avoided. Now, we might go over. We're definitely not going to finish this chapter probably in the 20 minutes that we have, but that's good because this is quite important, I think. And each time I go, excuse me, let me just go show navigator. And devotees generally, when I teach this, then they want to go over these offenses, so we can go over them, and I've got them on the slides here. So we'll bring them up, and if you've got any questions, you can ask. So this chapter 8, the 19th item, which we covered, which is Seva Nam Aparadanam. One must carefully avoid various offenses in chanting the holy name and in worshipping the deity. This is elaborated upon here in chapter 8. That 19th one, Nam Aparadanam, is the subject of chapter 8. Yeah. So Rupa Goswami makes this an important point and he elaborates on it even more. Yeah. So, but specifically, will refer to offenses to the deity. Yeah. And he's going to be quoting from the Padma Purana in that regard. Okay. So, we ready for this? Yes. Ready. Okay. Let me just change things around here a little bit. Okay, let's bring them up. You can see this okay? I'll have to move this up. That's better. Yeah. Okay, what I do, I'm going to read through these, and you're going to have to ring the bell or raise your hand if you want, if something's not clear for you. Okay, if you want more elaboration. So one should not enter the temple of the deity in a car or palanquin or with shoes on the feet. Okay. So some temples in India, they're open planned. You know, they've got no walls, you know. So in other words, it doesn't mean you shouldn't like come up in a palanquin and right up to the altar. No, you should respectfully bow down and come into the temple. Shoes, we all know that. We take the shoes off. Not possible sometimes outside the temple, but at least before we enter the temple room. Yeah. And the reason why these are there, because these are observations over the thousands of years that people do. And they don't know it's an offense. So now it's being listed. All right, it's actually an offense. It says so in Skanda Purana. Rupa Goswami says it. Yeah. One should not fail to observe the various festivals for the pleasure of the Lord. All right. So you're duty bound to follow Janmashtami. Yeah. Prabhupada was on a boat when he was coming to the West, and it was Janmashtami. And Prabhupada celebrated Janmashtami. Yeah, he cooked a feast for everyone else. He invited everyone. He had Krishna Katha, and he distributed prasadam. Simple. Sometimes the Janmashtami festival might be simple. Just like during lockdown, we had a painfully simple Janmashtami. Painfully simple than what we're used to. But what can we do? But we did observe it, and Rath Yatra, yes. So yeah, we shouldn't think, too many people, too many people. No, we should celebrate it. We should go, take part. You know, you should be one of the many people. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. One should not avoid bowing down before the deity. Yeah, we know that. Panchangam obeisances or 4 obeisances. We bow down before the deity. Again, if you've got anything to add to this, please, you're welcome to. One should not enter the temple to worship the Lord without having washed one's hands and feet after eating. Okay, in the West, I was listening to a Vaishnava etiquette class a few years back by Bhakti True Swami Maharaj. And he's mentioning this washing of the feet is generally not so easily done in the West, you know. But in India, it's a lot more, things are set up in such a way that you can do that. Like in the Mayapur temple, for instance, there's a place you can wash your feet. Now in Jagannath Puri, in some of the temples, it's impossible to walk into the temple without walking through the foot wash. Yeah. That's what Lord Chaitanya would do. He would walk to the Puri temple through the place where the feet are washed, and there was guards stopping anyone else from taking the Charanaruta. So that's the principle. One go out and wash one's hands and one's feet after eating. That's okay. In a contaminated state, yeah. So one shouldn't enter the temple immediately after engaging in conception or like that, or being to a crematorium also. One should not bow down on one hand. I mean, that's a popular one. Because we have devotees have a bee bag on one hand, and they enter the temple, and they one hand in the air like this, and they bow down, one hand in. No, you should put the bee bag down, 2 hands on the floor, very obeisances, then pick the bee bag up. Yeah. Sometimes we have this thing in our temple where, you know, you come into chant japa, and the first thing you do before you chant japa is you make an offense. Great, you step in a temple, the first thing you've done is made an offense by bowing down on one hand, you know. Okay, if you don't know, if you've just been in the temple, just coming, that's fair enough. But you know, put the bee bag down by 2 hands. Okay, so here it is. One should bow down. One should not bow down on one hand. Don't be lazy bowing down before the Lord. One should not circumambulate in front of Sri Krishna. No, we shouldn't put your back towards Sri Krishna. This is the idea here. You know? Sometimes I know what Rupanuga Bhakti question you're going to ask. What about Kirtan? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Because oftentimes we do that. We circumambulate in front of Krishna during Kirtan.
Yeah, I mean, there's different opinions on that. Some devotees raise their eyebrows about it, but generally, Kirtan takes on a bit, sometimes it takes on different level of rules, you know. Kirtan is kirtan, it can get quite spontaneous, you know. And if devotees enjoy are running around in circles in the joy of Harinam, then that's not an offense as such, you know. You understand? It's a different, you know, it's like a festival. Sometimes during a festival, there's different rules. Like, for instance, in a festival, like in normal times, a pujari who's ready to do worship shouldn't touch anyone who is not altar clean, so to speak. You know, have to be very careful. But in a temple, when there's thousands of people and it's inevitable you're going to touch someone, it's not considered an offense. You can still do your worship because of the circumstance.
Yeah.
So in that way, and when it's a kirtan, it's ecstatic and it's going around, you know, running around like we do sometimes, especially when Mahavishnu Swami is there. It's impossible not to get ecstatic and run.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
With Mahavishnu Swami.
Yeah.
So there, the mood is, yeah. So there, it's not an offense. It's a utsav. It's a festival. It's the holy name.
But what about chanting japa?
Yeah, then devotees will. Devotees should be careful. Devotees, Prabhupada would do that. I heard the other day, Prabhupada would do that when he would circumambulate the temple. He would turn his back when it came to, you know, the civil realm. Turn his back.
Yes.
Like that. So we should be conscientious of that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I observe devotees in our temple. You can chant. Sometimes they chant going long ways. So they turn their back to the deities and chant and go up to Prabhupada. Then they turn their back to Prabhupada and go. It's best to chant the short, you know, the other way. So you're not putting your back to the deities.
Yes.
So that's good point to note. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. Yeah. One should not spread these legs before the deity. Yeah. So the temple room is a formal place, you know. It's not our front room. Okay. The Lord is there. So we should be careful of how we sit. You know, I remember one time I was on Sankirtan at Canterbury, and I got this desire to visit Canterbury Cathedral, you know. And I thought, yeah, I'm in Canterbury, let me visit the cathedral. I was having a tough time on books, so go to cathedral. So I went in, it was in the winter months, and I went into the cathedral, and really impressive, you know. One man came up to me, one priest came up to me, and he motioned for me to take off my hat. Oh, sorry, Father, I took off my hat. But it's nice, I like getting that instruction, it felt right, you know. I'm going into a place of worship here, I should be respectful, you know. So the same way when we're in the temple, it's not an informal place. Those newcomers often don't know this, so you may have to tell them nicely and in a nice way, you know. So one should not spread your legs before the deity. One should not sit before the deity holding the ankles, elbows, knees. So keep that in mind if you're in class. Again, this is more, it's not so respectful to sit like that before God. You got your hands around your knees, you know, your ankles like that. It should be like, you know, respectful sitting position, you know. Be befitting the person on the altar, which happens to be God. Yeah. All right. And again, any questions of Hare Krishna? What should do one if one sees someone bowing down one hand? Well, be careful. Don't just go up to them with this quote and, you know, depends on your relationship with them, you know. You should be, it depends on your specific, and if you know them. A lot of times what I would do, if I see a devotee doing that, I don't say anything when they're doing it. But after japa, about 3 hours later, then I have, when you get like that, and then I'd say after, you know. So it depends on the relationship. If you have that relationship of in a position to give instruction to that devotee, then you may give that instruction. Or if you don't think you have that relationship, then you may mention it to the person who does have that relationship with the devotee, and can instruct them. you know. So, okay, is that okay? What should one do if one sees that? Yeah, so it depends on the relationship. Yeah. One should not lie down before the deity, same principle. This is too informal. Often we have that in our temple, guests don't know, they're lying down. There's a lady the other day, you know, she came into the temple and she was flat on her back like this.
Yeah, we had that situation in Brighton as well, probably.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just going to mention that, like the other day, I think my mummy, you would probably remember this. On Friday night, a young lady, she'd only been there twice. She also decided to have a little nap right next to the altar. And I was looking at Locha, and it's like, oh Krishna, what to do? Because we've not had that relationship with that devotee, aspiring devotee. So what do we do? Yeah.
Just better sleep for an hour.
Whoa, a couple of minutes, I think it was.
No, I find in my experience, especially if they're just coming for the first time, that's why I gave the experience of me walking into Canterbury Cathedral. If you do it nicely, people like it. Oh, sorry, I didn't know. You know, depends. Some people, you know, in London we often get crazy people coming, so we have to be a little bit extra careful how we might deal with them. But yeah, someone out at the temple makes people feel relaxed, you know, because it's peaceful and they come in. So yeah, it's interesting how we might have to deal with it, you know. But deal with it we should at some point. We should educate people, and they should somehow come to know what is the standard, you know. All right. Yeah. Anyway, so what did you do, Krishna Gopal? Someone told her eventually?
I think I waited for about an hour, and then during prasadam, not that she slept for an hour.
Oh, okay.
She kind of was like there for about a minute or so, and then
during said that,
yeah, during prasadam, I just said like it's best not to have a sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, do it nice. I'm sure, knowing you, Krishna Gopal, you're most gentle of the gentle. I'm sure she took it very nicely. Yeah.
I did have a conversation with her and I was explaining to her. Yes.
You did, yeah. So very sweetly she was instructed. Yeah. Yeah, so that's how the sweetness, exchanges should be sweet. That's the thing with people. You know? Right. One should not accept prasad before the deity. We can accept little bits of mahaprasad, things like that. That's why we put curtains, or we put like that before we may take prasad. You know, that's a standard practice. I think we're all familiar with that. Any questions about that? I mean, why is that? What's wrong with taking prasad? You know, because actually it involves Bhaktivedanta Purnama just commenting on this, because time's got 3 minutes left, 2 minutes left. He was saying that because by the activity itself of eating is because we have to wash, you know, it's a lot of saliva going and we're eating, kind of very informal, you know. It can be very informal, even it's prasad. So anyway, so we, out of respect, we close the curtains or cover the altar like that. Okay, let's make.
How do we deal with that in a sangha situation where we got the deities or photos of?
Yeah, so that you're going to have to perhaps decide amongst your leaders there if you want to start doing that. I mean, here it is. It says it can be something simple. You know, it can be a little screen you might pull in front of the pictures. I don't know what you're doing, Brighton. Perhaps you might not do that because I know your program there. So. I mean, but definitely in the temple where there's deities, then you definitely want to do it there. But if it's like a picture altar or something like that, then okay, it may not be absolutely necessary then, you know. Again, circumstances. I mean, and if you did do it, it would be okay as well. It might create a sense of awe and reverence to that part of the room where the deities are, but it may not be so practical. But definitely in temples. So Rupa Goswami really here, he's speaking about temples actually, you know. And some devotees have that standard in their home, you know. They have that standing in their home. One question here. I'm not sure if anyone else has a problem, but we found it difficult to open the sloka recordings which was sent to us via email. All right, let's finish on this point then. Anyone else have that problem to open the slokas on email? No. Best to contact Padmana Nityananda, Mother Kurunika. Best to speak to him about that, and he can correct that if that's a problem. Yeah. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us, and next week we'll continue with these here offenses to be avoided in the temple. Okay, we should not cry a howl before the deity. We can speak about this next week. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you for your kind attention, and look forward to
do we have a test next week or not?
I don't know. Is Padmana Nishananda Prabhu with us here? Okay, so stay tuned. I'm not sure. We'll have to double check that, and I'm sure he will inform you if that's the case.
Okay, because
Okay.
according to our timetable, it's listed. We have a test.
It is, yeah. Oh, and I've got behind again, so we might have to do the same thing. We might have to bump it a week ahead.
Okay, okay. And same about the second essay deadline is next Sunday. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mother, for reminding. So yeah, Mother here is reminding us, or reminding you, yeah, to submit your second essay, and then next week we even. Anyway, I'll check. It might be that the exam next week, that is scheduled for next week. Then there might not be any question from this chapter 8, or we might have already covered it. So in that sense, we can go ahead with the exam. But if a question happens to be on one of the subjects we've not described here, then we're perhaps push it forward a bit. Okay.
Okay.
Don't worry. We'll make sure that you've got everything you need to pass the test.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's saying second test is from chapter 2 to chapter 14.
Oh, really? So it's definitely not next week, I hope, because we're only on chapter 8. Anyway, stay tuned. I'll have to find out from Padmana Nityananda. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay.
Okay,
Hare
thank you.
Krishna. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next week. Hari Hari.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.